So, after what seems like a pretty long time, we are back to European football for the Europa League anyway. Of course, the Conference League has already finished off their league stages, and Aberdeen unfortunately went out, which isn't a surprise given the draw that they had. They had statistically the most difficult draw of any of the teams in the Conference League, which is a shame. I think at times they give a good account of themselves, but they probably maybe could have done a little bit better in some of the games. But getting to Celtic and Rangers, or Rangers and Celtic, whichever way around you want to say it. Celtic's European season has been okay at times. Probably some results they didn't want in there. Well, I say probably. There were some results like the Braga game at home where they probably felt like they should have taken something from the game. Especially with the disallowed goal away from home to Red Star. You know, that one was probably disappointing as well. Of course, the Champions League qualifier against Kairat as well was very disappointing. Rangers, usually Europe is a sanctuary for them. It's been a nightmare this season. They're already mathematically out of the Europa League with the 2 games remaining. It's not going to be enough for them to get that top 24 spot, which could impact the kind of teams that they're going to field for the remaining 2 games. But Danny Rowe, of course, has said in the media that he wants to keep the momentum going with the Europa League final 2 games that his team have created domestically anyway. So we'll see how that goes. But without further ado, let's get into the predictions for the 2 games. Starting off with the early kickoff, we have Celtic versus Bologna over in Italy. Bologna are the favourites for this game. They've had a relatively solid start to the season in Serie A as well. The big talking point, of course, for this game is Lewis Ferguson. I think, was it 14 games he's played against Celtic and not won any of them, so he's going to want to put that to bed tonight. Celtic, this game is, of course, it's important because if they take anything from this game, then it puts them in a really, really strong position in terms of the final game against Utrecht to be able to definitely secure the top 24. If they get a win here, I think 10. They think 10 will be enough, and 11 will mathematically secure it. Or I could be wrong, it might be 9 will be enough and 10 will mathematically secure it. It's one of the two. So a win here for Celtic would pretty much secure that top 24, if not completely secure the top 24. Even a draw would put them in a semi-decent position, I would imagine. But the draw, you know, other than a bit of confidence, if they think 10 is going to be enough, a win against Utrecht in the final day at home would do that. But you know, in theory, the higher up the top 24 you finish, the better your opponent is going to be for that playoff place. But, you know, Celtic arguably for themselves should already be in the playoff place with some of the results that they've had, kind of being nearly moments, if you like. In this game, it's interesting because, you know, they went and put in a really good away performance against Feyenoord, but Celtic away from home in Europe isn't usually a banker, if you like, and the odds are reflecting that. Of course, Celtic have had a torrid time domestically at times, particularly under Wilfred Dancy, but with Martin O'Neill back in charge, he has only lost 1 game in his 2 spells this season, which was indeed away from home in the Europa League to Midtjylland, who are, in fact, just having a really solid season in Europe in general. Night and day in comparison to the team that played against Hibs anyway. So it's a difficult one to call, but I would probably lean in favour of a Bologna win more than anything, but I'm going to play conservative and I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Now, this one's difficult to call. Rangers are being made favourites for the game. Ludogorets are in a position where they could potentially get the top 24, so they will be going all guns blazing for this, I would imagine. However, the calibre of opponents that they've played, they've had a relatively good draw on their part. Rangers, you know, they have severely underperformed in Europe this season, and of course at times domestically this season as well. They've started to pick up those domestic results under Danny Rowe to be able to get themselves back into the title challenge with Celtic and Hearts. But in Europe, it's been disappointing. Even under Danny Rowe, I don't think they've had a win in Europe under Danny Rowe either. So it's been disappointing. But this was the game that when it was highlighted at the start of the draw, could have been a really important one because Porto away in their next game was always a bit of a write-off. However, with Rangers officially being out of Europe, it's interesting to see how they're going to approach this. I don't see why they would risk any key first-team players in it. I think that would be a silly thing to do. The problem you've got with the Europa League is that you have to play players that are registered, so they can't just go and field a bunch of academy players like they could in the Scottish Cup, for example, where, you know, as long as they're registered domestically they can play. They can't do that. They need to play players that are registered. However, I just think that it would be silly of them to risk any key first team players, despite the fact that they want to carry on that momentum that they've generated. It would just be silly. At this point, you've got yourself back into a title race, and you potentially could risk players to injury. Hearts fielded a relatively strong team against Falkirk, for example, and they've lost Lawrence Shankland for a few weeks as a result, which could prove damning in their attempts for the title challenge this season, even though they are currently sitting in first place. So it's a tough one to call. I am going to, you know, it's tough. I think I'm going to go for a draw here as well, because Rangers will want to carry on the momentum. I think they'll rotate as well. But I think Ludogorets will be way more motivated to take something from the game than Rangers. So that's my predictions for the two games. I know it's a bit conservative, both. It's just with the mitigating circumstances. Those are the two that I'm going to go for anyway. If Rangers were in a position that they could qualify for the next stage, I think I would have predicted a Rangers win in this game. But you never know. We'll see what ends up happening. We'll find out tonight, I suppose. Thank you very much for watching. If you are new around here, please consider checking out some of the other content on the channel, whether it's the football related stuff, the FC26 related stuff, or anything else. I would greatly appreciate that, and I'll catch you in the next one.